Hello there, welcome to Africa Live, CCTV's new program that brings you African and global news from all perspectives. I'm Raman Yang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Here's what we have lined up for you in the next 30 minutes. Sudan now says it could reverse its order to block oil exports from the south. And the Nigerian coach Stephen Keshi says he will be fielding 4 uncapped players at the Confederations Cup. We've got an exclusive interview on the matter. We start in Egypt right about now, where the trial of the country's former president Hosni Mubarak resumes today. A judge is expected to review the prosecution's evidence against a former Air Force officer. Mubarak is being retried in a case based on the killings of hundreds of civilian protesters in 2011. Mubarak and his former Interior Minister Habib al-Adli were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison last year after the court ruled that they were complicit in those protesters' deaths. Now, despite Mubarak's failing health, the court granted the defendants a retrial following their appeal. CCTV's Carol Oyola now takes a look at the former Egyptian leader's court appearances, as well as other charges that have been leveled against him.
January 2011, Egypt was engulfed in political chaos. Protesters demanded the resignation of then-leader Hosni Mubarak. 11th February 2011 and Mubarak caved in. He stepped down, giving way to the military Supreme Council to run the country. On 24th May, judicial officials announced that Mubarak, along with his 2 sons, would stand trial over the deaths of anti-government protesters. On 2nd June, he was found guilty of complicity in the murder of some of the demonstrators. Along with his former Interior Minister Habib al-Adli, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. In January 2013, an Egyptian court allowed an appeal against Mubarak's and al-Adli's convictions and ordered a retrial. Mubarak and his sons would also be retried on corruption charges for which they were acquitted. Mubarak's trial had been due to begin in April, but the judge recused himself in a hearing that lasted just seconds. He referred the case to Cairo's appeals court to select a new panel of judges. Mubarak's health has been a bone of contention during his trial and incarceration. He suffered a heart attack after relinquishing power and had maintained that he was physically unfit to stand trial. He has been held since his guilty verdict last year. He is also charged with seizing public funds and misusing political influence. Mubarak and other defendants have pleaded not guilty to all charges. Carol Oyola, CCTV.
Let's get the latest on this trial now. We're now joined live by Adel El-Mahrouhi. He is live in Cairo. Adel, has the trial begun, and what do we expect to be the key points in the retrial?
Well, it has already begun, and the first half of the trial has ended. What happened is that the judge have opened 5 boxes. They all include the evidence that the prosecution has submitted to the court. He has shown the defense, the prosecution, and the media the exact content of the evidence that the judge has, and according which he will be judging on the trial within the coming period. He also listened to the demands of the defense team. The main demands were mainly to have copies of the evidence and the log sheets of the first trial. Also, the defense has requested to have some decent time, as they said, to have enough time to investigate and look carefully into the documents and the evidence that they have for the retrial. The judge has adjourned the session now, and he will, when he come back, announce the next date for the Mubarak trial.
Of course, the trial so far has been, or rather the previous events of it, have been characterized by several delays. How have the families of those who died in the protests in 2011 been taking these delays?
Well, the families are quite furious. Last time when they were here on Saturday's session, they have shown anger against the judge's decision to dismiss the civil rights case to a specified court which has the jurisdiction over the civil rights claims. Also, they have been blaming the court for elongating the period of the trial itself. And with what we've seen today, it is more likely that the judge might set the next session, maybe in a month or two or more, as far as the judge could tell. The evidence looks big in number. There are thousands of documents in this case, which might make the family victims lose interest in following the case itself. Today was also one of the signs that we've seen this happening. Maybe 2 or 3 of the family victims were attending instead of 10 who usually attend each session. This is mainly because, of course, the civil rights case has been dismissed, but also they have notified and spoke many times about losing interest, and they might refer to getting their own rights with their own hands.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much for that update. That's CCTV's Del Makhrouhi. He's been covering Hosni Mubarak's trial and now his retrial. He'll have more details for you on that at 1700 GMT. On to another big story on the continent now. For the South, concern continues to build as the former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, spends his 3rd day in a hospital in Pretoria. Now, there's been no official update from the South African presidency in the last 48 hours. That said, though, the president's spokesperson told the SA Times newspaper on Sunday at 4:30 p.m. local time that there's been, quote, no change, end of quote, to his condition. Madiba was visited by family members on Sunday at the hospital where the former president is being treated for a recurring lung infection. South Africans across the country have been praying for a man who's widely regarded as the father of the nation. Scores of journalists are currently stationed outside the hospital where Mandela is believed to be receiving his treatment. Let's cross over now live to CCTV's Guy Henderson. He's in Pretoria. He's been following the story fairly closely. Guy, there was an expectation that the presidency would update the public on Sunday about Mr. Mandela's condition, but no news ever came. Do you know why this happened?
Well, you're right. There was that expectation. We don't really know why. On Sunday, Mac Maharaj, the president's spokesman, did give an indication that he could update journalists at about midday on Sunday. Now, that news never came, and that obviously does worry people. Just really small amounts of information coming out. One of them, as you'd mentioned, in the Times newspaper, which is one of the South African daily newspapers here, quoting Mac Maharaj at 4:30 on Sunday, saying that there was no change to his condition. So from that, I think we can glean that his condition does remain serious but stable, but no indication, of course, that he is responding to any treatment. Then an article in another daily newspaper here on Monday, the Star newspaper, claiming that the Mandela family are now putting strict controls on people who can enter what we believe is the hospital behind me here in Pretoria to visit Mr. Mandela. We understand that no senior government or party officials are now allowed to make visits, and that from where the family see it, the way the family see it, it is now a family-only affair. And then just finally, a quote, very brief quote from one of Nelson Mandela's daughters, Zinzi, in the UK's Guardian newspaper on Monday, saying that she thought her father was a fighter. Well, that does suggest, of course, that we believe in the hospital behind me here in Pretoria, that Nelson Mandela is having to fight.
Well, this development, of course, has attracted enormous global media attention. How's the balance between the family's right to privacy on one hand and the public interest, Mandela being who he is, of course, likely to play out?
Well, it has caused tension, that issue, in the past. On the government side, well, they've consistently accused journalists of being excessively intrusive. Journalists, on the other hand, have said that the government have been misleading the public on various occasions, for example, by not ever confirming where Mr. Mandela was being treated. So back in December, for example, you had a situation where the South African Defence Minister came out of one hospital on the outskirts of Pretoria, not at this one here in the centre, and seemed to confirm Mr. Mandela's presence inside that hospital. And then on the other hand, you had a local journalist entering a different hospital, managing to get inside and reporting from inside that hospital that this was in fact where Mr. Mandela was staying, and that the government and the Defence Minister weren't telling the truth about his location. Since then, things have changed. There has been a build-up of trust. But on this occasion, it has now been 48 hours, more than 48 hours, since we've had any official information about Mr. Mandela's health. So in terms of how this will play out, well as being the father of the nation, it must be remembered that Nelson Mandela is also the father and grandfather of the Mandela family, a family that for the best part of 27 years he was deprived of seeing because he was in prison. So I think there is an appreciation here that while, you know, in the latter stages of his life, he may be allowed, there is an understanding that he may be allowed some dignity and privacy to spend time with his family, perhaps even at times at the expense of a public interest that he has, after all, spent most of his life dedicated to.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much for that update. That's CCTV's Guy Henderson live in Pretoria, keeping tabs on the developing story of Nelson Mandela's hospitalization. Time for a short break, 10 minutes into the hour. Here's what's coming up next. We'll be focusing on an astronaut's dream. The crew of the Shenzhou 10 vessel are preparing for China's 5th manned mission to space. We'll have the details when we return.
Breaking news, global trends. CCTV News brings you stories with the different aspects of Africa in the international content. With our reporters across Africa and all over the world, we'll tell you about the real Africa and how it impacts the world. Africa Live, every day, only on CCTV News.
Now, China is set to launch the Shenzhou 10 spacecraft sometime this month. Shenzhou 10 is China's 5th manned mission to space. It will last 12 days and it will carry 3 astronauts to the Tiangong-1 space module. Now, preparations for the launch have entered the final stage at this point in time. China's manned space program has selected 3 astronauts for the mission after a pretty strict filtering process. They included Nie Hesheng, Zhang Xiaoguang and Wang Yiping, and they've just met the press. Now, Nie Hesheng, who also participated in the Shenzhou 6 mission, will be the mission's chief commander. Zhang Xiaoguang, part of the backup team for Shenzhou 9 last year, has finally been chosen for the crew of Shenzhou 10. This will be his first space mission. Wang Yiping, the only female in the team, will become China's 2nd woman astronaut in space. According to the chief commander, Shenzhou 10 will perform a manned docking with the space station, which he has practiced almost 2,000 times. Zhang Xiaoguang will also assist in the manned docking while monitoring the flying of the spacecraft and sending high-quality video back down to Earth. Wang Yiping, in addition to the routine equipment operation, will also manage the space teaching courses and catering for the crew's daily life. Now, Shenzhou 10 is China's 5th manned space mission. It will last about 12 days, as I just mentioned. It will take astronauts and cargo to and from the Tiangong-1 Space Lab module. And like the previous Shenzhou 9 mission, it will also include a manned docking procedure with the space station. CCTV's Jin Yangqiao has more. The 3 astronauts will be taking part in this mission.
Nie Haisheng will be the mission's chief commander. It will be his 2nd time in space after also taking part in the Shenzhou 6 mission. And this mission is something new in store for him.
On Shenzhou 9, there was a 24-hour rotation policy, which meant the crew had to work 24 hours a day. But this time we can sleep during the night, and after finishing our daily duties, we'll have time to relax and do things like appreciate the beautiful view of space and listen to some music.
Nie Haisheng was born in a small village in Jiaoyang County in central China's Hubei province, the 6th of 10 children. Nie's family was so poor that he only finished middle school with help from his teacher and neighbors.
I was in the 2nd year of junior high school when my father died. My family was so poor, I was forced to stop school and work in order to earn money. My teacher visited my family many times to try to persuade me to return. Finally, I went back to school. I wouldn't have what I have now without my teacher. That was the most important turning point in my life. The 2nd turning point was after I graduated from high school and joined the army to become a pilot. That was the first step along my career path. The 3rd turning point was passing the physical test for astronauts in 1996, which finally offered me the opportunity to go into space.
Zhang Xiaoguang was chosen in 1998 for China's space mission. 15 years later, finally he's ready to go.
I will look at our beautiful planet, our beautiful homeland. I can find out whether it's possible to see the Yangtze River and Yellow River. I can take a look at the deep universe and shining stars. I feel very excited.
Since the team of astronauts was created in 1998, China has carried out 4 manned space missions. Whenever they reach space, they always phone their families. And this time is no exception.
I think of my father. He said, "Son, go, be courageous and careful." I also think of my wife. I know she's very busy. Our child is taking exams for high school. A couple of days ago, I went home and said, "You must be very tired." You know what she said? She was like, "Not at all. This is what I must do for my family and my love."
Wang Yaping is the only female in the crew. She'll become the second Chinese female astronaut in space. It's been a long and winding road to the launch pad.
It takes a great deal to become an astronaut. You have to be outstanding overall, have great specialty knowledge, go through lots of rigorous training to adapt to the space environment, and take very strict tests that allow almost no errors or mistakes.
Before becoming an astronaut candidate, Wang used to be a pilot. She flew as part of relief efforts following the Wenchuan earthquake in 2008, as well as in other operations at the Beijing Olympic Games.
I remember the first time I flew a plane on my own. I turned around and found my trainer was not with me. I was really thrilled and had a good shout in the cockpit. It's like I could finally do this on my own.
One united Chinese dream, they can fly themselves. Jane Chow, CCTV.
Back to Africa now. The chief of staff for the Libyan army has resigned. His resignation came after violent clashes killed over 30 people in the eastern city of Benghazi. CCTV's Cheng Yi has more details about the situation in Libya.
Just like what happened in Tripoli yesterday, the Benghazi people, they gathered to make their voice heard. That is to get rid of the weapons from the streets and the militias out of the city. That was when they clashed with one primary military group based in Benghazi, Libya Shield. The protesters called them militias and wanted them to disband. But actually, Libya Shield has been authorized by the country's Ministry of Defense. And ironically, some of these demonstrators, they were armed themselves. And as far as I know, it was these people who opened fire. Unfortunately, the death toll is close to 30. So far, the Libyan army has taken the situation under control, and the Libyan government has promised an investigation. And today, some military vehicles are trying to move the heavy weapons out of this military base.
Now, correspondent Cheng Yi also got to speak to Salah Mito, a member of the General National Congress, on the deadly clashes that have rocked Benghazi.
Well, I think it's improving compared to what the situation we were in last year. But obviously it is still the main concern, security, security and security. The problem is you cannot have investment, you cannot attract the foreign companies to come to Libya to do the job we want them to do with the security situation being as it is now. It's not very bad. In fact, it improved a lot compared to what we were in, as I said, a year ago or more. But still, those armed groups which are formally, and this is the controversy, this is the irony, they are formally part of the Libyan, they are endorsed by the Libyan Ministry of Defense, but still people look at them as militias, as groups not under the control of the state.